Hello and welcome to Worlds Apart, Words Together, where best friends share laughter, stories, and unbreakable bonds. And I am here with Marit,
Hello.
co-host for today.
Yes. Just like every other week.
And today we are going to be tackling a topic that Marit has been struggling or working through this.
Yeah. Indeed. Thank you for introducing it like that. My struggles. They are struggles in a way. Um, as the listener who listens to this podcast knows, I started working recently and I work with a very special but wonderful population. And that population is people with autism. And basically, the struggle that I was facing is, how do I frame this? The way I told Leah is that I have pretty good human knowledge. I know how the average person typically thinks or acts. I would like to believe. Behavior is pretty predictable, and the explanation of certain behavior is very predictable also. However, when you're talking about the autistic population, it is very different. The explanations of certain behaviors are not as obvious and as, oh yeah, of course it's because of that, than with the average population. So going to see my clients and going to work with them really has me struggling with putting it into the autistic perspective. That's basically like the issue that I'm facing, problem,
Yeah,
whatever you want to
and
call it.
you had also told me a little bit that you only get a limited time with your clients, and
Yeah.
you leave them. You do your best to help them in that time, but then you leave them knowing that they have a chance of going back to how things were, or maybe not being able to stick to everything you talked about. And you
Yeah.
kind of have struggled with almost taking it personally and bringing it home with you, and you're trying to work through some of that.
I totally am trying to work through that because, some people's lives who are on the spectrum are amazing and they just need maybe a little bit of help with structuring their day. But then others, like they really struggle keeping a clean home, keeping themselves clean, talking to people, and just doing like basic human needs that we would consider normal and that we would consider easy. Like taking a shower for the most people is easy, but some like people on the spectrum, they struggle with that a lot because it's too many steps and they can't really work through them. And so seeing that by some people and then trying to help them for like the hour that I have with something and then having to leave knowing that, their life really hasn't changed anything yet, even though I'm there trying to help them. And I think that will forever be a difficult part of this job. It's like you're doing everything that you can to help them, but you can't fix everything.
Exactly. And a lot of it is just they gotta find a way that works for them, and you're there to help them with that. But
Yeah.
in the end, it's still kind of on them to kind of also do some trial and error work.
Yeah. And, I just really started with my clients, so I haven't seen them as often yet. I've seen like two or three times tops. So it's way too early also for me to really understand them and really see their behaviors. But I don't know where I was going with this. I think kind of what I wanted to say is no, I really lost my thought. I'm sorry.
That's right. So I guess we have this podcast really to bring awareness to a lot of different things, particularly around the self growth and mental health and self development and
Yeah.
that whole kind of area. And so I guess there's two kind of parts that we can kind of like discuss a little bit. And I guess like the first one would be, what are some things that you are doing, because you're kind of new to this, like you said, you just pretty much started with your
Yeah.
clients, and you're kind of new to this whole like career and like being in the field and all of this. And there is kind of like, you take on basically what your clients are giving you, and it's hard to kind of like leave work at work and then go home and live your life. And so, what are some things that you are kind of trying to trial and error yourself to help not take things so personally?
I try to tell myself of like I'm only there for a small part of their needs.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have goals together, and I'm only there really to help them with those practical goals.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be able really to give them therapy or be their counselor
Mm-hmm.
or give them medications. Like it's only a small part in their entire existence that I can help to adjust or help
Yeah.
to improve. So I try to tell myself like that's what I should focus on. If they have
Mm-hmm.
other mental health issues, I'm sorry that they do, but then they need to see another professional to
Mm-hmm.
tackle on those issues.
Yeah, they need a team, or like they need
Yeah, like
to.
as much as I, want to help them and I've studied psychology and I feel like people who studied psychology always want to kind of take on that role of the psychologist of like you can talk to me about anything. Like I still feel that way a little bit, but I also have to remind myself I'm not here to be their psychologist. I'm here to help them build practical skills that they can apply into their daily life.
Fair,
So,
yeah.
for example, one client of mine is wanting to do some work on his attic at home, but he doesn't know where to start. And he really would like to have a plan to be like, this is the tools that you need to have, this is the materials that you need, and then these are the steps that you have to go through to build this. So, what we're going to do together is make a plan like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that I can do, but being there and be their marriage counselor,
Mm-hmm.
that's not my job.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think it's good that you put it in that perspective, is that you are one of a team essentially helping them,
Yeah.
and to just focus on like your specialty and like what you are there to help them with, and try not to put that like a pressure or whatever you might want to call it, that really is another team member um
Yeah.
expertise and
And
a job.
like probably in 2 weeks, I will meet with one of the psychologists who is helping one of my clients. But that is more to be like, okay, what are you doing with her, and what
Mm-hmm.
is expected of me as her like coach to be doing with
Mm-hmm.
her? Because she's kind of divided in like, well, I have two people helping me, but she's not sure what help she is expecting from what person.
Yeah.
So we're going to meet together to kind of set that up. So, everyone needs something differently. I guess to answer your other question of like, what am I doing to leave it at work and not really bring it home, is I have my work laptop, my work phone in my backpack, and I put that backpack in a different room by the end of my workday so that I also don't look on it, don't want to answer emails or texts or whatever it is, and I open them again the next morning that I start work.
That's fair. So like just like out of sight, out of mind type of thought.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't always work because, as you know, I dream a lot. So, in the past few weeks, I've dreamt about my job plenty of times, and it's kind of annoying because I'm like, I don't want to dream about my job. I want my job to be my job, and that's it. So, I'm not sure yet what to do about that. um, but I try to stay away from autism as much as I can
Mm-hmm.
when I'm not working.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Well, at first I was trying to read about autism and listen to about autism as much as I could when I wasn't working because I wanted to learn. But
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, if I do that, I feel like I'll be working 24/7.
Well, you can also spend some time during your work day reading or listening about it.
Yeah, and I do that because right now I don't have my full caseload yet. So I have a bunch of gaps that I can fill that up with. And the cool thing is, in October, the forensic branch will start up. So I'll move to forensic clients instead of the like regular clients that I have
Yeah.
now. Um, and so I get to do a lot of that work also to kind of read into how autism is related to criminal behavior or, um, certain things about that. So I get to do that now, and that is pretty cool too.
And you said that starts in like 2 weeks?
In October.
Oh, in October. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're still working on the permits and they hope to have the permits settled by like midway of September.
Mm-hmm.
And then by October, the forensic branch is starting because the way they have it now is that they just have people who are requesting coaching and they go to the municipality and then the municipality will take them through like the whole process and then they will be sent to us. And with the forensic population, it's people who are either in the prison system or on probation that require coaching by like the judge
Mm-hmm.
or by the court.
Yeah.
So that will be the difference in that, and that also means because we now provide voluntary care, which is these people that we're seeing chose to look for someone, while the forensic population is they must do it.
Yeah.
They are required to. So that intrinsic motivation is probably going to be a little bit different, but that makes it also more challenging.
Yeah. That will just be like a new kind of dynamic. I feel like it'll
Yeah,
add some texture to what you've been doing so far.
totally. Yeah.
And you got to be a little bit
Um,
more creative.
I think so. And we also got to be a bit more cautious because the caseload will be a lot more heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because there's probably comorbidity playing a big role with that. So it'll be fascinating for sure, but we're already talking about like safety precautions and
Yeah,
what kind of information do we share and what kind of information don't we share, like that kind of stuff. Um,
that's
but to kind of like shift this topic onto the general population, because you and I, when we talk about things, we often talk about it in a way for like the neurotypical general population to be able to work with that. And I think as being part of the general population or the general population in general, we are required to do perspective shifting very often.
mm-hmm.
And I think many of us can improve on that a lot. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think it is something that's not done necessarily well. I think it is quite common to get dragged into your own rabbit hole of thinking and acting in a way that you always have, or something that's just been ingrained in you. It is very useful. You can learn a lot. You can think about things different. You can form new relationships, meet new people, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If we have the ability to kind of shift and be open to these new perspectives.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. To add on to that is that people tend to judge a book by its cover real quick. Um, I had a client this morning who said, and I love people with autism because they're so honest about everything. And she was like, people see me on the street and they think I'm fine because they see me out and it's like, oh, but you're moving, so you must be fine. But she's like, they don't see the times when I'm laying in my bed and I'm so tired I can't do anything. Like, they don't see that. But because they see me outside walking or biking, they assume that I'm fine. So when I tell them that I just get so tired and I can't move, they're like, oh, but I just saw you walking. Like, what's wrong with you? And I think when you're not open to alternatives than what you're seeing,
Mhm.
you're limiting yourself.
I agree. I think that's a very good way to express that idea, because it is true. It happens way more than what you would think. It happens with people with not only mental challenges and mental disabilities. It also happens with people suffering from physical disabilities or living with physical disabilities.
Yeah.
Um, and it goes two ways. I think I spent like half of my undergrad in therapeutic recreation, which also works with those with physical and mental disabilities. And there is a fine line that you have to live on, and it's that you don't want to baby them, because they are most of the time very smart, very capable, very willing, very wanting to be independent. And the other side of it is the complete opposite of like, well, they look fine, so they're fine,
Yeah.
which may not always be the case. So it's like you got to be open and understanding that lots of different physical and mental disabilities present themselves in very different ways. Some are noticeable and some are not. Does not
Yeah.
mean that they are not living with that. And it also, I feel very strongly about it, is like it does not define them. And
No.
I think at least, 5 years ago when I was going through this, we, at least in the US, it was very much a defining term. Whatever their disability was, that defined them. That's how you're
Yeah.
supposed to treat them. That's how you talk to them. Even with like my sister, she competes at a national level. She excels in school. You would never know that she has an intellectual disability, and she does. And my mom caught it very early, and my mom worked with her to find a way for her to excel, and no one would ever know. Like, you talk to her, you read what she does, you see what she does, you would never know. And
No.
that's because my mom pushed her and continues to push her, because she's a teenager still, to be the best that she can be, to be independent, to be able to fend for herself and do all this kind of stuff. And it doesn't define her. Like, it was easy. Like, if she was in school, she could have been like cast, fell behind several grades, or whatever, be
Yeah.
considered average or below average her whole life. But my mom went above and beyond and kind of helped tailor the program that helped her to excel. And I think that's the important thing to understand, is that all these people, like I said, they're smart, they're capable. Most of the time they're wanting, they don't want to have to rely on people. They want to be able to do things themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that is the important thing to understand. Like, that is huge, because they are people. They just think a little different, or they plan a little different, or they walk a little different, or whatever. It doesn't change, it doesn't define them. It just makes them more unique. It makes them who they are.
Yeah. And even, now we're kind of talking about the off norm population, but it's the same with shifting your perspective when it comes to just the humans in
Yeah,
general.
yeah, for anyone.
Because for anyone, because I like this example a lot. It's like you could be having the best day of your life, but the person sitting next to you on the bus could have the worst day of their life at the same time.
Hmm.
And you see that person all looking mad and all like with a straight face or upset face, and you look at them and you're just like, damn, like, why you're so goddamn rude or whatever it is. While if you flip it and you'd be the one having the worst day of your life, you might be exactly the same, but then you'd be judging the people who are all happy around you of like, why are you so happy? So it's just about that perspective of like, people aren't feeling the same way that you're feeling, and they could be going through a lot that you're unaware of, and just that they show up to work and that they are happy on the outside doesn't necessarily mean everything is good and great, or they have a loving home to come back to.
Yeah, for
um
sure.
like, it's just, I guess what I try to say with that is judging people by what they do or their moods doesn't say anything.
Yeah, and just passing them or having a train ride with them or bumping into them in the street, that is such a fleeting time
Yeah.
of our existence, or like your existence with them. You don't physically, you don't know them, you don't know that maybe this is their off day, or you don't
Yeah.
know that they had a family member just die that they were really close to. You don't know what is really going on. So like, I like to think, I heard this like example at one point. It was a while ago, but essentially it was, if you see someone who's having a bad day, or they say something rude to you or whatever it might be, you just internally think they're having a bad day. Or you can think, oh, maybe they just had like a fight with their significant other or whatever. You kind of be like, they're having a bad day. That's not really, that could not be who they really are.
Yeah.
And the same thing is when you see someone that's really happy, you internally can think, I'm really happy for them. Something good must have happened to them today.
Yeah.
And so it kind of gives you a moment of pause, not to rush to your thoughts, because this could be for literally anybody, any
Yeah.
population.
Because you tend to think when someone is being rude or being grumpy, like, oh my God, what a rude person. No, it's not a rude person. They just have a ruder moment, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, we
Well,
don't
yeah,
know that.
some people just are kind of rotten, but I would say chances are, if someone was negative towards you in any way or rude, or you see them having, like a outburst with who, like an argument or whatever, don't necessarily jump to conclusions, because one, you're not in that situation, you don't understand that situation, and two, it could just be a bad moment, a bad day, something horrible could have happened that made them act in that negative personality or that negative characteristic. And the same thing when someone's happy. Something amazing. They could have got their dream job. They could have just bought a car. They could have got married. Like, you don't know what's causing someone to be over the moon happy. And it's a
Yeah.
good way to think, because it slows your rush judgment. It can slow how your impulse reaction is towards that person, just by that internal conversation of like, putting their actions towards you and how you filter their actions towards you in like a more positive light, or a more
Yeah.
rationalized processing internally.
And to give another little example from like my work, some people with autism, like, or yeah, I'd say a lot of people with autism, they can't read between the lines. It's like you got to be straight up with them,
Mm-hmm.
and they will be straight up with you. Doesn't mean a personal attack. If they say, "Oh, your hair looks like a mess," it's because your hair looks like a mess. They're not going to be like,
They're very literal.
I
They're very literal.
think I think you should do something about your hair because it's not looking the way it usually looks. No, they just be like, your hair looks ass. Go change it.
Yeah,
They are
and
very
like,
literal.
yeah,
And
and
I notice that too in my conversations with them sometimes. Like, I feel like my communication is quite clear, but then sometimes I catch myself saying something and I'm like, I should not have said it that way. And then they ask for clarification. So they're like, oh, I don't know what you mean by that. I'm like, okay, I'll change my wording. Because they can't really see the meaning behind some
Mm-hmm.
sayings or words or
Yeah, I think again, understanding, that everyone processes and everyone has different experiences and everyone is living and feeling in their own space, which could be different than yours, and just understanding that. And so, don't rush your judgment, don't rush your reaction, don't rush your thought, because you don't know. It
you
boils
don't
down to,
know.
you really don't know. Sometimes it is good just to pause and take a second and process before, they say, think before you speak. And
Yeah.
a lot of times that is normally not how it's done. But I think that's very important, is especially in forming relationships or communicating in any form with anyone, think and process before you speak.
Yeah. And some advice I think will also be helpful is how would you like it if somebody were to think those things or say those things about you or to you? If you think to yourself or if you think about somebody else, like, oh, that person is ugly as hell. And then if you're like, well, what would I feel if somebody were to think that about me?
Mm-hmm.
Probably don't feel as good. So that is always some advice to put in your pocket also. Yeah. Anything to add to this topic?
No, I mean, I think we covered kind of what you were discussing this week about your struggles with work, and what you've learned from working with your clients and working in this new
Yeah.
population, and some big takeaways that you've had. I think we've kind of covered. We've done a
Yeah.
good job. If
And
anyone wants clarification or wants to add, or maybe has some thoughts or experiences, like, feel free to let us know. Like, we're
yeah,
always open to hearing more advice and more experiences in any topic that we
totally.
discuss.
Totally. Yeah, no, just to add a little bit more to like how I will be handling, I guess, my work situations a little bit is I also am going to go with colleagues to their appointment with clients to see how they coach people because I'm still really searching of like what is expected from me, like what should I be doing? Because we've been given all the tools to do it, but we really haven't seen it in practice of how
Mhm.
people coach people. So
Well,
I
you also
asked
have to
my
find your style too.
no, I know I do, but it's still something of like, okay, there should be some sort of norm on this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I'm gonna go with a colleague and just kind of observe how he does the coaching and hopefully learn something from that and continue to grow. And I had this, I'm gonna share this story because it is a fun story, I think, and then we'll wrap up. I have this one client, she just turned 18 and she was very drawn into herself the first time I met her, and like we have to do this type all this paperwork to like have our files on order or in order. But I noticed she was very unresponsive and I could not get through her, and she was just sitting like with her knees towards her face and with her hands like that, and I was just not getting through her. And I asked my colleagues for some advice. I was like, I have this girl and like all my other clients were ready to go, ready to get going with the goals that they have, but she was just not getting to me at all. And their advice was wait with the paperwork. It's not priority right now. The priority is for you to connect with. And so what I did today, I did not bring my laptop or my phone into the home. I just was with myself and my car keys, and I was like asking her if she liked puzzles because I saw a puzzle in the house. And I was like, "You want to go do a puzzle?" Like, I don't know. But then when I grabbed the puzzle and went to the table, like I noticed she just like came straight away and she started talking to me more. And when I asked her questions, she was a lot more responsive. And I was like, this is good. So what I really notice is that just every person needs something completely different. And I think it'll take me some time to really figure out that I need to approach people differently.
I
Because
mean,
now I
that's
approach them in like the similar way of like, this is the plan. Most of them have been pretty responsive to that, but then this girl wasn't. So I had to be creative in what I'm doing with her.
yeah, and that just goes to show that everyone, regardless of what they're struggling with or what they're dealing with, are different. Every individual needs something different. That's what makes us unique, and I think that is such a wonderful story because it does show that so clearly.
Yeah, and my colleagues were too like, it is just about you and her for
Mm-hmm.
now. Like you need to find a way to connect with her. And she's been in her room for the past few weeks just doing nothing. But now I grabbed that puzzle and she kept puzzling when I left. So I was like, I this puzzle might be done by the end of the day. So at least I hope that I did something there, that she did something differently than just laying in bed and being on her phone.
Yeah, and I think it's such a great perspective because like just doing one little thing or suggesting one little thing brought such a big impact to her. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with this podcast. We're bringing all these things that we're working through and we discuss them and we hope that at least one person gets something from it. And
Yeah.
it's how you should interact with everyone is how can I be in this interaction and they can take away something positive. Whether it's a bad interaction or not, how can you act in that situation so that someone gets something positive out of it, even if it is a negative situation or a positive situation, whatever it might be.
Whatever it might be. No, that's totally true. So I'm sure I will have plenty more stories to eventually share. But yeah, that was just also a moment for me to be like, you know what? It's true. It isn't really about the paperwork and this and that. It's about what does she need that I can help her with. And if that means we're going to be puzzling for the next few weeks, we're going to be puzzling for the next few weeks.
There you go.
But yeah, with that, we want to kind of close off and thank you for joining us as we offer a glimpse into true friendship, where even though worlds may seem apart, our connection remains strong. And we will see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye bye.